Thank you, Tánaiste. There's a flurry of pre-election and funding announcements coming at us every day, many to groups who have been campaigning for many years, but there's nothing like an election to concentrate the minds of a panicky government. And in that context, I suppose timing is everything. But in the real context of life, Tánaiste, time is everything, particularly for 25 families whose children are suffering from SMA. And I've spoken to you about this on many occasions here. And this week there's been some substantial developments, unfortunately none here. Every day, Tánaiste, counts for these families and indeed for every sufferer of SMA. And it is now being proven medically in virtually every country in Europe bar two. One of those two is Ireland. That Spinraza is the drug that gives time and it gives opportunities to those who suffer from this awful condition, who before this had no opportunity. Spinraza has been proven to be a miracle drug in every sense of the word. Tánaiste, I first raised this with you on the 20th of September, which is 8 months ago now. And on that day, you sympathised with the children, you sympathised with the families. I think you may have met them subsequently. You said it was a priority. Nothing has happened. I raised it again on the 13th of December, 5 months ago. I raised it again on the 28th of February, 3 months ago. Deputy John Curran here beside me, Deputy Stephen Donnelly, Deputy Lisa Chambers and other deputies from all sides of this House have been raising it consistently, Deputy O'Callaghan as well. Because timing is everything, Tánaiste, and I don't lay out those dates to seek some sort of a credit. I lay them out to show the importance of time. And what 8 months would mean to these sufferers if they had had access to that drug then, what 5 months would mean, what 3 months would mean, what 3 days would mean. Their families have been told time and time again that it is a priority, that it will be dealt with. And time again they have been let down. They were let down last Tuesday because they were told it was to be discussed and decided on the 14th of May. That decision has been kicked down the can. They were let down again on Wednesday when they found out that the NHS has approved an access programme on Spinraza, that those who need Spinraza within the NHS will have access to it. But the 25 families here and the adults who need Spinraza won't get it. And when I say 25 families and 25 children, it may take away from the fact that these are actually real families. It's Grace, it's Killian, it's Sam, it's many other children, and adults too, Tánaiste, who are going through hell. They're suffering from the condition, their families are dealing with the trauma, and now they're having to deal with this as well. And Tánaiste, I would implore you to go, when you get a chance, on Facebook and see the testimony recorded on Tuesday from Grace O'Malley after they got the news that the decision was being kicked down the can again. Tánaiste, it's enormously frustrating for all of us here because there's cross-party agreement on this, and I know that this government wants to make it happen.
Time is up, Deputy.
But we are impotent. There's some unanswerable body playing with these families' futures. And we, as a political system, have to take charge. Tánaiste, please, can you update us on what the situation is with Spinraza? Why, once again, has that decision been postponed?
Please, Deputy.
And why do Irish children have to be deprived of this when children across Europe can access it?
Tánaiste.
Deputy, I, like you, want to provide certainty to the families that are impacted here. And I've met one of those families, and they were incredibly dignified but also hugely frustrated by the fact that their child can't access a medicine that they see as making a huge difference to the quality of her life. You know how the process works, Deputy. It is not politicians that make decisions in terms of recommending what drugs and at what price they are supported by the state. We have had a process that has been ongoing for quite some time now in terms of assessment, and there have been back and forth consultations with the drugs company as the rules in terms of the assessment process determine. I had an expectation that this week a decision would be made, as had other people. My understanding now is that it may take longer than that. I've spoken repeatedly about this after questions that have come up here and after speaking to one of the families concerned, to Minister Harris, who also, I think, is frustrated too and wants to bring clarity in a positive sense to families. There is, though, Deputy, as you know, an obligation on the HSE to ensure that expenditure of this scale must be approved on the back of strong evidence of clinical and cost effectiveness. But I do accept that we have created timelines over and over again whereby families have built an expectation around a decision, and that decision hasn't been finalised. And I do think that the concerns and frustrations of the families are fully understood, I can assure you, within government and in the Department of Health. And we certainly want to try to finalise decisions and get an outcome that's positive for the families concerned here. But we can't change to a position, because of the frustration around the process, that we simply move from a HSE structure making appropriate decisions on drugs such as Spinraza available and at what cost, to essentially having politicians making those decisions in a political and potentially inappropriate way.
Tánaiste, Deputy Calleary.
Thank you, Tánaiste. The process is broken. If we're the only country left, bar and Estonia, that hasn't approved it, the process is broken. Minister Harris bypassed this process before in relation to Pembroke. He approved it. The process is broken when nobody is answerable to families, to public representatives, to those of us who have a mandate as to why there are delays. And delays matter, because when you have this condition, every hour, every day matters. Every hour, every day you don't have access to this drug is a day and an hour more in pain. And yet nobody seems answerable for that. And when you speak about cost effectiveness, and I spoke to some of the families this morning, they actually anticipated virtually every word of your response. When you speak about cost effectiveness, they look at what's happening in the National Children's Hospital. They look at overruns on the HSE's watch everywhere. And then they look at their children suffering because some faceless, unanswerable operation is not taking a decision and not taking responsibility. A precedent was created with Pembroke, Tánaiste. Precedents can be created, and it's time for politicians to take charge.
Thank you, Deputy. Tánaiste.
Deputy, as you know, so far this year, the HSE has approved 23 new medicines and 5 new uses of existing medicines, representing an additional investment by the HSE over 5 years of approximately 175 million. So it's not like the HSE wants to deliberately prevent these drugs, but we are effectively in a negotiation between the HSE and the company involved here to try and ensure that we get a fair price and that we can provide the drugs that many families understandably have grown incredibly impatient and frustrated about because they can't get access to. I appreciate the frustration. I've answered questions in relation to Spinraza for many months now, and many colleagues from the opposition benches and indeed from the government benches are also concerned because they know the families. This process does need to come to a conclusion, but I think we need to be careful that we don't set a precedent here that switches a decision-making process which is based on critical assessment and make it a political decision when it should be a medical one.